Hello, everyone. This is our weekly backdrop design meeting for Thursday, February 12th. We will, as we do, start our meeting by going around and having everyone give a just quick introduction of their name and if you like something you're excited by or working on. I'm Robert Lang, bug folder on the internet, coming to you from Altadena, California. And I'll pass it over to Tim.
Robert, I asked you to start to give me time. Get everything
organized. I can go.
No, I'm ready. I'm ready.
I'll pass it over to Irina.
Hi, I'm Irina Zaks. I'm working also in California, and I'm looking forward to Backdrop Live.
Yeah, maybe I can go next. I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece. In general, excited about anything related to Backdrop in any way that I can help. And I'll pass it on to Martin.
I'm Martin in the UK, I'm building a few sites in Backdrop at the moment, and also trying to contribute wherever I can. I'll pass it over to Joseph.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm a backend developer based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. And Tim, you're the last person, so.
I'm Tim Erickson. I'm St. Paul Tim in the forums and on the internet, and I am in Deerwood, Minnesota, where we got a small snowstorm happening right now. So, and also Irina's getting me excited about Backdrop Live. She's been really pushing us to get going, which is great. I love that. Anyways, let's jump right into our meeting. This week we are talking about design UX issues, and Greg has some things he wants to talk about, but let's first see if anybody else had any other sort of issue queue issues that they needed help with or need unblocking. Does anybody else bring anything to the meeting? I didn't have anything today. No? Okay. Well, we can go back and find some things if we need to at the end, but since Greg is excited about this other UX initiative, let's go ahead and talk about that. Greg, just take over. If you want to share your screen, go ahead.
Yeah, at some point I'll share my screen as well. Just let me just do a prologue. So from time to time, I just happen to come across either old posts or videos from presentations in DrupalCons. And I happened to come across two different presentations from the same person for the same project or the same goal or subject, I should say. One was from back in 2014, and the other one I think was somewhere around 2021 or so. And it's about around the ecosystem, about a project which is an installation profile, is my understanding, and a set of satellite high-call modules called Tasty Backend. I'll post a link. Oh, there's already a link in the Zulu chat, but I'll post another one in the Zoom chat here. So yeah, I was watching this presentation, and a lot of things made sense for me from a user experience standpoint, just specific to content authors though. So a little bit of context. This past week, after some months of hiatus, I delivered a training, content admin training for government people for the GovCMS distribution in Australia. And every time that this happens, that I deliver trainings, the questions that I get and the feedback that I get from newcomers that are interacting for the first time, either people that have some previous experience with other CMSs, or first time that they ever heard of the term CMS or Drupal, right? And the pain points and the frustrations seem to be the same for the newcomers. Then randomly, it just happened right after the training, the day after the training, to come across these video sessions. And I said, look, that person delivering doing the presentations is so spot on, because they were hitting the points that the attendees in the training were trying to make, that no matter how much you train them and how good the trainer and the training material is and how much attention and love you give them, it's still the learning curve for Drupal and inherently Backdrop is still steep. Like there's terminology, there's UX issues that, you know, there might not be problems or very obvious problems, but they are still pain points that as chronic users do not see them. Like we have gotten used to them and we are making knowledge assumptions. So I'll share my screen now. Just give me 2 seconds. Can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, this is a screenshot of the admin interface in Drupal 8. I'm assuming with the difference that it has gone through the installation profile of this project, Tasty Backend. And the thing, if you see this from a content editor perspective, you will see that things like taxonomy and menus are not hidden underneath a structure menu, which has all these other things that are irrelevant. And I understand that certain of these things that are under the structure menu can be hidden via permissions. I understand all that. But another thing that I have noticed being in the the application support team, is that digital agencies, because the permission system is so granular, I know it's not a right practice or a right method, but instead of trying to properly tweak all permissions, they either give user one access to the site owner and the content editors, or they just create a role which is way too permissive. Like it gives access to people to things that either could lead to them breaking their site if they do a mistake, or if they're very cautious people and they are very careful with what they do and they take backups, so they don't touch things that they don't need to. Still, there's too many controls, too many options, too many menus in front of them that confuse them and make the user experience less ideal, right? Whereas this thing has exactly the menu items that content editors would need, plus another item for users, which would be specific roles in your organizations for only those people that are tasked with adding and managing users on the site. And this idea just makes sense to me. I don't know how much of that we can implement in Backdrop, or it makes sense to implement them. I don't know if it would be ideal to have it as a contrib solution. I don't know how much of that belongs in core, or if it could be another installation profile available in core, or it could be just a recipe. I don't know, but it makes sense to me. Like I almost want to create a blog article with instructions on how to get there. Right.
Sure.
So yeah, there you go. Discussions.
I think that there is. I don't think it necessarily goes into the menu, but there is a module called Simplify that strips away quite a number of the admin options that that people don't need to see. But I think that's actually on the forms themselves. So I can see that there's a benefit in stripping the menu back, where you've got someone who is just a content editor.
Yeah. So we have taken one step towards this direction in recent versions of Backdrop, and our Drupal brethren had followed the same, where we have added out of the box another role, which is the content editor. But this role gets access to the full admin menu, right? And although it might not be the same options, because as I said, there's permissions associated with it, still there's a lot of options there that do not belong in the workflow of what a content editor does. So there's a few modules, like you mentioned, Martin, in Drupal land, and maybe most of them might have already been ported in Backdrop, right? There's this specific, I'll try to remember it's called something like admin menu context. Let me just administration menu source, right? Which is a solution that allows you to specify different menus to be used for the admin menu, right? And I just like small things that maybe they could be in core, like allowing people to clone a menu easily, right? So they can take the admin menu as it is now, clone it, and then strip out things that they don't want for their content admins. And then either have permissions per menu or the ability to assign roles per menu, right? So these two simple things in my head, I'm imagining that code-wise, it should be very simple. But then again, as I said, I'm not sure if these belong in core or people do not agree. But since we have this whole, mentality towards making things easier for people, yeah. Anyway,
my thoughts are, first, I think the two big steps we've taken in this direction already that I've been involved in are one, adding the editor role, and two, adding the dashboard. Both of those things could be improved upon. I like your whole point, though, about actually having a different menu. One of the things that occurs to me, why the editor role might not be so effective, is that, especially for a lot of smaller sites, right, is that they spin up the site. They have to kind of log in as a admin to start with, and sure, there's this editor role, but I'm guessing that a lot of site editors just, don't even start using that. They just by default start using the admin role. Like when I build sites and I turn them over to clients, I give them the editor role and an editor login, and I say, if you ever need admin access, ask me, I'll give it to you. But they start out there, so that's where they're going to use it. If you're building your own site and you start out as admin, it's highly unlikely that you're going to demote yourself to an editor. And what I'm getting at is maybe there could be a simple way to sort of, as an admin, to just switch to being like the editor view.
Yes, this was
simplify your menu, and I'm sure there's Drupal menus or Drupal modules that do something like this. And I don't know, maybe we have something like that in Backdrop already in Contrib.
Yeah. So the whole premise of this thing is that a site builder would install the first instance of Backdrop, but then they would need, it would be a sole freelancer or a small digital agency that is delivering sites for the customers, but then they would need to tweak. And that was a thing that the person doing the presentations was saying all the time: build this for your customer, tweak it for your customer. So the premise that I'm making is that we give the tools to site builders to easily, with very few steps, without possibly having to install a lot of Contrib modules, to get to a point where they deliver a site to the site owners, where they have an amazing experience, but only with things that they absolutely need.
Yeah.
Right now, this task of getting from having a lot of permissions, being either user one or the site builder or whatever you want to call it, right, and then getting to a point where you configure a role for the customer, for the site owner, or the various roles if it's a slightly bigger organization where they have a separate team for content editors, separate teams. Still, it's some effort. So if we can make it easier, that's what I was thinking. How we make it easier, whether it's core worthy or some of the things are core worthy or not. Yeah.
So if it's helpful, I'll just quickly show a site.
Yeah.
Some things that we've done. This is a Backdrop site for Twin Cities Opera Guild. This is the site that inspired the opera theme that I'm working on. And this is the editor, me logged in as the editor. And this is what I turned over to the site manager and the person who's administering content. Now, I think your point, Greg, is that on the one hand, we've really simplified this, right? They can only, I think this might have done before we added the editor role. Either that or I even, I think, further reduced it. But there's very few options here. Now, this site has Civi CRM, and if you click on that, you suddenly get the entire Civi CRM menu, which is, but that's unusual. Anyways, so on the one hand, I have this, so this kind of defeats the whole purpose. Is now you've got like 2/3 of this I don't even understand. But let's close that. Close the Civi CRM menu. Oops. How do I, remind me, how do I get out of this?
Go back to home.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
Go to home. So see,
The
that's
other-
a UX thing right there.
The other thing, I've made a few changes on like I added a content block. I don't know if they find this useful. I also have there's a dashboard plus module, which I like the managed content block better that I created for that than the default one, where you can just create or manage. I really like this create button, which we don't have in our dashboard. Right from the dashboard. I don't think we do. We have that. And the other thing that I did on this, which is not a core thing, but just to mention it to people, is I used the book module to kind of create editor-only documentation for the site. So the site manager has a little book that kind of walks them through the major features and gives them some text. Anyways, but
Yeah,
the main
so-
thing I wanted to show was just, but I think, Greg, what you're suggesting is that, sure, it's one thing to reduce this menu, but another thing would be to restructure it a bit to make it more.
Yeah, so you'll see that this is great. This is a great step, like very thoughtful of you as an agency, as a developer, as a site builder, when you deliver the site to the customer,
Yeah.
right? The site owner. But still, if you hover over content, for example, or the dashboard, you will see and structure, right?
Yeah.
You hide the taxonomy,
Yeah.
which is the end target
Right.
under a menu. So there's levels of things that are unnecessary there,
Yeah.
right? And then one thing that is missing here is menu access, because if you
Yeah.
give them menu access, you give them access to even this menu, right? So that's what I'm saying, that if we had an easy way in Backdrop Core to specify per role access to specific menus, then it would make things easier for you as a site builder to give access only to specific menus. And ideally, there should be an item there, not under structure, but a top level item that says menu. And it would give them access, say, to the footer menu and the navigation menu, right?
Right.
So these are the things that have been mentioned in the presentation, and it makes absolute sense. If I was building sites for customers, that's what I would do. But it takes a small collection of modules and some work. Of course, the first link to the first video is back in 2014, as I said. There was no concept of using core yet, and people in Drupal 7 had to use what was it called, admin views, to convert like even the managed page into a view that can be tweaked according to customer requirements, or you would have to separately add views bulk operations, things like that, right? Anyway, so I was thinking maybe I would start a UX meta, and then we can sort of like take it from there and see which things are things that can easily be done with very little change to core, and which can be left in contrib. It might end up just being a documentation task, right? A documentation on best practices on project delivery.
I think that's all fine. And there are different strategies, right? I think some of this does belong in core, some of it might belong in contrib, as you say. What I would be, in my sort of fantasy world, I think if I were to start working on this, is I would start it out as a contrib project that I plan to put in core. But I would start it out as a contrib project so that I could get people using it as quickly as possible and giving me feedback, and also so that I could make decisions quickly without as much bike shedding right away. And then to try and quickly sort of pan out sort of an admin thing. But I would be thinking with core in mind, like, trying to keep it constrained so that eventually it could get into core.
Yeah.
And
there are certain things though that make sense as it is, like, and I'll repeat one of those things is per role assignment
Right.
per menu. We do a similar thing. We have similar UX when we specify which roles have access to which text formats, for example, right? It wouldn't be a paradigm that's totally different, right? And it would allow more fine-grained control. So one thing that site builders do not want to give access to people is the admin menu. You want them to be able to tweak their navigation menu, their site menu, right? But not the admin menu, because they might break the site in ways that it would make navigation even more difficult for them. That's where I was getting at. So there's still small things that obviously make sense, and I'll add them as separate suggestions for core. But yeah, certain other things do seem like a contrib, or as I said, a documentation or a blog article thing of, hey, use this set of contrib modules and do this, this, and that. But yeah.
So with the biggest thing, I mean, just my gut reaction right now is that if I were to start today and trying to do this, that I would start with just rebuilding a menu from scratch for targeted sort of editors, and saying, if I had the freedom to start from scratch and rebuild the menu for site editors, what would that look like? And that's where I would start.
Well, no. It would become a problem, because the menu structure as it is very useful, and we've poured a lot of thought into it for site builders. If we change it now, we are sort of like ditching that work, and we would be messing it for another user profile. So ideally, as I said, first of all, just let's make clear that you can do this now. Right, as a site builder,
right,
you create another menu, but it's a lot of manual effort. So another small things that could be in core, which we are already starting to do, is allow menus to be cloned. Right, we already have operations. So instead of having the site builder have to replicate all the menu items, have them cloned. And then another thing is that some items in the current admin menu are special items. Like when you create a new content type, that becomes an option at their content, add content, right? So you need to make sure that the duplicated menu that is dedicated for content editors has this functionality as well, because you don't want to be adding content types and then having again to do manual things, right? So yeah, there's a few bits and pieces that can go as small functionality in core, and then you can piece those items together in an installation profile, but they need to live somewhere.
And you as well, what you might have, and you might need to also hook into whether the person has permission to edit that content type, because there will be some content types that aren't going to be applicable to the content editors who are adding articles and updating pages and events. There'll be other content types that are more related to functional aspects.
Yeah, and I think that's already handled. I think that we already have per content type permissions in the content type screen. And if you disallow a content type for a specific role, when they view the structure, not the structure, but the add content menu, the content types that they don't have access to are not there. So we're doing already a good job with that, right? But yeah, you're good. You're right. That should be sort of like something that works out of the box. Yeah. Or the other thing, see, because I mentioned that certain roles, or if it's a smaller business, that the site owner should have the ability to also manage roles, right? Maybe not permissions necessarily, but something that is being achieved by modules like role delegate. So you want the site owner to be able to assign roles like the site owner role in case he has a partner or they have a partner, right? And anything below it, like content editors and so on and so forth, but not the site administrator role. So there's these restrictions that, Anyway, so my point is that make it easier for site builders to easily, so that they don't get lazy. And this is what we see in GovCMS land, right? We see that government agencies are complaining that, hey, we cannot do this, we cannot do that. And then the digital agencies that are looking after them, no matter how expert they are, and because the customer will complain if you spend too much time tweaking things, they just give them too many permissions, right? And they end up borking their sites eventually at some point because they accidentally do something. So yeah, so I'm not suggesting a specific solution. I'm just saying that I saw that and I liked many bits of it. And how do we make it easier for site builders to do a better job faster, which is what we already are doing, like by putting the whole what you call it, mentality of us building Backdrop was to make things faster compared to Drupal 7. Like, you don't have to install views, you don't have to install a config editor, you get these things out of the box. So this is where I want us to eventually get. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have anything on this? I'm going to go back and just defend the last point I was making, which is I would start, and again, I'm just saying start, hear me out, by redesigning what I think a good menu would look like. One, because then it would give us an idea of what the tools that we need to build so that somebody could get there. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would implement that, but I would I'd want to start with what I think that should look like so I can figure out the best way to get there. But also, I'm not sure it is enough to just give site builders the tools to create this, because I think the hardest thing about doing this is all the decisions you have to make. And what I think I really want is somebody to give me a template, right? I don't want for you to just give me the tools to like make all these decisions and implement it myself. I want like some real hints or a template. This is a starting place for site editors, and now you can modify that, which we to some extent have already. That's, I mean, our editor role is in some ways a template of what we think are a default set of starting points.
So my sort of like recommendation would come similarly to how we added the content editor role and how we ship Backdrop with an administration menu. There would be a stripped down version of administration menu would be called content author menu, not administration menu, and it would have different structure altogether. Some of the items, not some of the items, all of the items would be coming from the admin menu, but they would be brought to the top level if there's not any necessity, you know, to go through less decisions, less clicks, I should say. So yeah, similar to the way that we went through the process of deciding what permissions the content editor role should have out of the box, there should be made similar decisions for that menu, right? So we would have to go through that process if it is to be done via core, right? There would be some feedback about what tasks content editors do most of the time, which things they shouldn't access, and things like that. And according to that, we would build it. But yeah, yeah, cool. Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody, let's move on and see if we have any, what are the next steps? I'd like,
After this?
like for us to always be thinking more action orientated. So how,
Yes.
What can we do to move this forward? Are you going to create this meta issue you talked about?
Yes, I think I'm going to start it there, and it's going to have bullet points. And I know that we have a tag that says contrib candidate, and usually we use that for specific things. Now there may be multiple things that are contrib candidates and some that are, you know, core candidates. But let's start with the meta issue so that we can get a discussion going to see if it's a good idea or not, which things belong in core, which not, things like that. So I'll go ahead and do that in the near future, hoping very soon, because it's a good idea. And then next steps would be, I'll keep bringing it up, and I already, I'm gathering that there's interest from the look in your eyes. So yeah, anyone that wants to help, there you go.
Sure. Well, there's interest. I don't know if there's bandwidth on my part, but we'll see. Certainly to give feedback and to talk about. my answer to every problem for the next 4 weeks is going to be to plan a backdrop live session. So there's no problem that
actually-
can't be solved by planning a backdrop live session. So I think
Actually,
this
yes.
is a great topic. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good topic for the backdrop live thing. Yes, let's do that.
And the
And
sooner we get it on the schedule, the better. We can change it later if we need to.
I got you.
So yeah, you could call it Tasty Backend with credit to the Drupal
The author.
initiative.
Yeah.
Or tasty like backend. I don't know.
Yeah, tasty backdrop. Instead of
Backdrop. Whoa. What? So, do we have any other UX issues? I haven't been watching the issue queues closely. Do we have any? I'm going to mention, but I don't think there's any reason to talk about the big one that we have been talking about is this whole ageless nodes thing, which I'll just report hasn't had any. I'm saying this out loud partly to put pressure on myself. No progress in the last 2 weeks. We really know what the next steps are. We just need to take them. We want to do that soon because we don't want this to drag out till the end. We want to get this into the next version of Backdrop soon enough that we can test it and we're not crushing it at the last minute. So that's the status on that. Are there any other issues like UX issues like that maybe are stuck or would benefit from talking about? I just opened the list of issues that are marked as UX issues. And I'm looking at the most recently updated one was 8 days ago, project installer, enable modules. What is that one, Greg? Is there?
Sorry, which one?
It's issue 5489. Looks like something that you've worked on. I only pulled this out randomly because it was most recently updated by bug folder by chance. Maybe this is
which number again? 50?
5489, and this may not be a good one to talk about. I don't know. It's just the most recently updated one. That's all.
5489, right?
Yeah, you just created this 8 days ago. 5489 backdrop issues. Yep. It's
yeah. So that's a very simple thing. So if you properly create the checkboxes when they're on the table, so you have a column with checkboxes, and then you have a column with the labels of the items, like in this case, it would be module names, right? So if you go into the modules, I can share my screen. I have an instance. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So this works fine. See, so I'm not just clicking here, I'm clicking the label. This is a separate column, so it's a separate item, and there's a trick where you can make this work, right?
Okay.
But if I go to install a new module, web form, install it. Right.
What's happening?
My computer's frozen. It's gonna die on me. So yeah, basically the next step after this would be, it would present you the web form module and would say install it, right? In this case, the checkbox works, but if you click the name of the web form module, it doesn't. Does that make sense? So this is what I'm trying to fix. I'm trying to make that checkbox and the label work the same way that it works in the module enable module listing page. All right. I think my computer's gonna die. So sorry guys, I'll join again in a while.
Okay. You're gonna leave, right?
Yes, but I currently don't have any way to stop sharing. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna kill my computer myself. So see you guys. I'll join again shortly.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So there are two UX issues that I've noticed lately that interest me. Although both of them I think have gotten some attention lately, so I don't know that they're stuck. It sounds like at the dev meeting last week you talked about the making collapsible sidebars in the Harris layout. I wasn't there for that. I know Doc Wilmot said somewhere that he thought that collapsible sidebars was a contrib thing. It looks like the discussion last week was to do something with flexible layouts and make that possible with flexible layouts. Anybody here have opinions of or know what we're involved in this discussion? Oh, I can't hear you.
I thought I saw a reference to a Harris flexible layout in that discussion, which essentially was Harris, but with collapsibility. I don't know. I don't remember if it's a contrib module or
Sure. There's a contrib module that's in the original description. It says currently there's a contrib module that does this. So I think the debate is what needs to go into core. Like, one, do we need something like this in core? And then two, if we do, does it need to be like a template, or could it just be the flexible layouts capability? Like, as far as I know right now, you can't create a flexible layout that does this. And so I think it sounds like that's what Quick Sketch Nate was recommending. Personally,
just adding it to the core.
Yeah, well, making it possible, I think Nate's suggestion, if I read this comment correctly, is that we add the ability to the flexible layout so that you could create a flexible layout that would allow for a column that would be collapsible. I don't think that works today. That rather than adding a template like this to core or trying to modify in a backward compatible way an existing template, that we would just make it possible to build one with flexible layouts. It seems to me that there ought to be some way in core to have a layout that with a flexible, with a collapsible column.
Yeah.
And it also seems to me, and some of you who've listened to me, like Martin, just an hour ago, to me, I feel like our current layouts, our current layouts in core lack some things. For me, the big thing has been the ability to stretch blocks all the way across the page. Again, I rant about this all the time, and I found solutions. I'm working on a theme which gets around that. But the opportunity to like add a layout to core that is more flexible in that regard, to me, would be a good thing. On the other hand, I buy the argument that maybe we should be moving not towards adding layouts at all and encouraging people or making the flexible layouts a more powerful tool, because a lot of my problems I can solve with flexible layouts. And so maybe it's silly to be trying to like add layouts to core when we could just be making flexible layouts a better tool. What do folks think about that? I mean, should flexible layouts at some point just replace, or could they replace the core layouts? I mean, I'm not talking short term. I'm talking maybe Backdrop 2.0.
I think it's still good to have templates in there. I do think that the flexible layouts templates could do so with some UX TLC, because I went into, I thought I'll have a go at doing this, and I'm reasonably experienced, but I thought I'm really not sure what I'm doing here. I looked in the list of backdrop videos and I couldn't see a helpful Tim video about using the flexible modules, flexible layouts template. So I think it probably is powerful, but I certainly wouldn't want to be throwing new users onto that
Okay.
and unless it was made a lot more straightforward and clear as to what the user journey is to build your layout using that template.
For Greg's context, and because he probably has opinions on this, I just brought up the collapsible columns, layout columns issue, and the sort of general question of should we be working towards making our current selection of layouts better, or should we be putting our effort into making flexible layouts a better choice for people?
Yeah,
because
well, it wasn't
not that we
present-
can't do both. We could, but
So it wasn't my baby issue. It was Irina who mentioned it, but Irina
Yeah, I know.
maybe. Yeah. So as you all know, my day job doesn't involve backdrop. It's just it makes sense to me when there's no content in a region to expand, but then there's different opinions. Like there's the other camp, Jen camp, and she has a point, right? If there's no content in the sidebar and you have the main content, the main content area expand, then you get into other problems. It depends on how long it expands, because then the text becomes too lengthy, and that's a known user experience issue, like reading long lines, right? So yeah, I guess it's to each its own is the expression, right? And a matter of preference and use case, I guess. If we could accommodate both in some easy way, then that would be ideal.
I think, Greg, the question I was asking, if you had an opinion on, was forget about the specifics of this request, but the idea that we could be making improvements in our layouts. And is it better? Should we be thinking more about making our existing layouts better, or should we be thinking more about how to make flexible layouts a better tool, so that we really don't need the structured layouts? Now, Martin, is just as you came in, Martin was saying that he finds flexible layouts to be a bit challenging for a beginner, and so maybe we need some work there. And two, that doesn't mean that we couldn't provide some default flexible layouts. It's like, Greg, you have promoted that any layout we should be able to convert.
I was about to mention that.
To being right, we should be able to convert them to being flexible. Well, that wouldn't really be helpful right now if you can't do the things that we want to do in flexible layouts. Like you can't make a collapsible sidebar in flexible layouts, so that doesn't solve that problem. But it might move us in that direction.
Well, if you make any layout, if you give easy like 2 or 3 clicks steps to people to convert and replace the existing layout, which in order let's take this a step back. A site builder is not happy with the current layout. There's not another layout existing ready-made that fits their need, and the one that is being used there fits their needs 98%. So it's the 2% that are missing. I'm just arbitrary numbers around now. So they have 2 options. Either they copy the code of that layout, because we don't have any option to clone the layout template, I should mention, right? And they actually get into coding, which we're trying. This is one of the problems that we're trying to solve, right? No need to not necessarily any needs to code, and this is where I think that proposal would make sense. If there was an easy button or a few entry points that would allow you to convert any existing hard-coded, I don't know what you're going to call it, layout template into something that people can easily manipulate via the user interface, that's, I think, something that is worth doing. So again, thinking about site builders that are not necessarily coders, or that they prefer to not code if that's an option.
Okay.
That's a nice topic for the Backdrop Live session.
Sure.
And then I have another one.
The problem, right? The problem with what you're suggesting for me is that I have no idea if that's realistic. To be able to, and it might turn out to be not a big. Some things that feel to me like they could be almost impossible turn out to be really easy, and other things that seem like they should be really easy turn out to be really hard. So I try to think of things that I know are manageable, right? And like one thing we could do that would be manageable would be to just convert, to have all of our core layouts, sort of a flexible version of them or something. I don't know. That seems
Yeah.
like that would be manageable.
I hear what you're saying, and I'll tell you this. If we were discussing this like 7 years ago, I would tell you that I'm all ideas and I can't put code where my mouth is, but I have evolved.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I still have more ideas than I have time to code. So I'm hoping that my ideas will inspire other people and get to implement some of these things. But yeah.
I saw Nate arrive and realized that we've reached our endpoint. So we should end this meeting.
Yeah.
Hello, Nate.
Mm.
Let's wrap up this meeting. I'm going to hit the